Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. So as promised, this week we are going to talk about and by our I mean mine and my husband's fertility journey. And as such, I have a very brief trigger warning. In this episode, we will talk about bodily functions, bodily fluids, medical terminology, pregnancy, lack of pregnancy. I think that covers it. If any of these things are triggering in any way and detrimental to your mental health, you will not hurt my feelings if you need to skip this episode. As such, here we go. So a little brief backstory. We have been married for almost 8 years at this point. It'll be 8 years this August. And we don't have any kids yet. And as PG as possible, it's not from lack of trying. Not from lack of trying. Not to the full extent. We weren't doing like ovulation predicting kits. We weren't taking my basal body temperature. We weren't doing all of those things. We were I track my cycle because, and this is another part of it, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, and so my cycles can be irregular. So we track them, and from that it kind of predicts when is the most viable time to have a baby, to conceive a baby. But that's pretty much all we were doing. We weren't trying anything extra or beyond the biblical way. Sure. And that was mostly because we didn't understand. We didn't have the medical coverage that would be helpful for this type of situation. However, this past April, Andrew separated from the Air Force. He finished out his 6-year contract, and we had civilian insurance for the first time ever as a married couple. So we were able to explore options. We didn't have to go through the hoops necessarily of seeing our primary care physician to get a referral to see a specialist. I made an appointment, briefly explained on the induction paperwork that we have been trying for so long. I have been diagnosed with this disorder that kind of hindrances this, and set up an appointment. This one was for this past August, so August of 2024. We go through this. The first visit was just kind of like an introduction. We got to know our primary care, I'm going to say primary care provider in this instance, for the purpose of fertility and reproducing. So we are actually going through a fertility clinic, fertility specialists, to this point. So that was pretty much what the first appointment entailed. I believe I might have also gotten an ultrasound at that point. If not, I got one during the testing portion of our diagnosis and the beginning of our treatment plan. But that day we also gave blood for purposes of genetic counseling and making sure that we didn't carry anything severe that really shouldn't be passed to an offspring, or that could determine which way we wanted to go as far as if we wanted to do intrauterine insemination or in vitro fertilization. And I can explain a little bit more when we get to that point. But we both gave blood. I gave significantly more than Andrew because I was also getting tested to make sure my vitamin levels were where they're supposed to be, and make sure that there wasn't anything underlying that could be revealed in my blood work that would be harmful, that could cause harm during a pregnancy. Other things that we got done, like I said, I also got an internal ultrasound to make sure that my uterus and my ovaries were healthy. I will say, again, because I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, that there was a good chance I could have any number of cysts on my ovaries, and they only found one. And it wasn't anything that needed to be of concern. It's just small and chilling there. It's not growing or anything. and I've had like 7 or so ultrasounds since to prove that it hasn't grown to a point where they feel like they need to be concerned. But that was something else I did. I also, and pardon me if I mispronounce this, I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on television, a hysterosalpingogram. I'll explain what that is in a little bit. And then Andrew had to provide a sample for a semen analysis. And I'm just going to go through this as we were kind of given all this information in our results for the pre-screening portion of our treatment and developing a treatment plan. So nothing out of the ordinary was shown in any of my tests. I do have a slight vitamin D deficiency, which is as simple as taking a vitamin D multivitamin. They did put me on a higher IU. However they determine the dosage of vitamins, they put me on like a prescription level of vitamin D, and then for once a week for like 8 weeks, and then I'm just supposed to take a daily multivitamin that's like 2,000 or 2,500 or something like that. The semen analysis came back that count was good. Count was actually like in the above where they wanted it, like where there's no concerns as far as count. The morphology and the motility were a little wonky, but because of all the advances we've made in medicine, there is a multivitamin that can be taken, and so they gave him a prescription for that. Like I said, when we got the blood work done, they also sent it out for genetic testing. We were given our results for that fairly quickly. They outsource it to a different clinic, and then that clinic called us. And they tested me for like 560 some genetic disorders, and I think Andrew was tested for about 550. And of all of the genetic testing that they did that overlapped between the two of us, only one thing we are both carriers for, and that is retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative eye disorder, and that it causes gradual blindness starting about the time that anybody who has this mutation turns 4, and it's pretty much a done deal by the time they're an adult. I think it's said in their 40s. Don't quote me on this. If I'm right, I'll put it down below right here in post. So anyway, because Andrew and I are both carriers for this, we're not affected, although I wonder if that's why if it presents itself even to those carrying. I have awful eyesight. There is a reason why you're seeing the reflection of the ring light. I can't see without my glasses. I go full Velma Dinkley if I lose them. I need my glasses to find my glasses, and if I don't have my glasses, I'm blind. But there is only a 25% chance that any children we have, of course it's 25% per child, will have this genetic mutation. Some of the things that we could do to ensure that any offspring would not have it is doing in vitro. If you do in vitro and you have any type of genetic mutations that both you and the person providing the other half of the DNA share, they can test the embryos to see if any of the embryos are affected, and then move on from there if you like, depending on what you wanted to do with it beyond that. However, Andrew and I are not doing in vitro, so the other alternative is getting testing done in utero, at birth. Really, you can do testing at any time with this one. And so that will be something that Andrew and I discuss a little bit more in depth once this whole process works. But other than that, that was the only thing that we shared. Andrew is a carrier for some type of autoimmune disease, but because I am not also a carrier, the only thing that our child could be is a carrier. And with that, there is some symptoms that present themselves, like having a vitamin B deficiency. Like, he gets cake or sores really bad, and that is a sign that he could be a sign that he is a carrier of this, which we thought was interesting. It also made me buy him a vitamin B12 vitamin supplement to kind of help with that. I also made a mention that I got a hysterosalpingogram, which is a big fancy way of saying I had dye pushed through my fallopian tubes. This is to make sure that there's no blockages, because that could be a reason for not getting pregnant if the egg cannot make it through to the uterus. But it was all clear, and that was painful and gross. And if anybody has any questions specifically about that, you can email me. I have my email listed on my channel. But I'm not going to get into why that was horrible, because, yeah, it was bad. But anyway, it wasn't bad in the moment. Like, it was a little uncomfortable because to get to the fallopian tubes, things have to be inserted. And it's always uncomfortable when that happens. But anyway, none of the tests that they showed really gave us a foolproof answer as to why we couldn't get pregnant. So to an extent, we were diagnosed with unexplained infertility. Yes, I have PCOS. However, I get my period every month. There wasn't a blockage or anything like that that could explain it beyond just the PCOS. So, typically, even though we haven't been trying like full stop every month for a year, because we've been trying off and on for 7 years at that point and have not had any success, along with the findings that we got from doing the pre-screening testing and the fact that I was diagnosed with PCOS, she suggested we look into alternative means of reproduction, which brings me into treatment. As far as for having low vitamin D count and anything like that, I was prescribed vitamins, and Andrew was prescribed vitamins. For anything like that could be treated as simple as introducing more nutrients into our diet. But we decided, instead of going with in vitro, which is very expensive and insurance does not typically cover it, and all that we were going to go the route of intrauterine insemination. What that typically entails, and what that entailed for me this past month, was that I went in on between days 3 and 5 of that current cycle. I got an internal ultrasound to check on follicular growth. So, your follicles grow, and the eggs grow within them that are then released to be fertilized or flushed. So based on the size and the amount of follicles, which typically aren't going to be a lot that soon after the start of your period, my doctor prescribed letrozole. Typically, you'll do letrozole or Clomid. So if you are starting this process and you've had other people go through this and they're like, Clomid, it is one of the options that are offered. But this helps with follicular growth. It helps form more follicles, which helps produce more eggs, which helps the chances of having a baby go up. So I took that for 5 days and then went back in for another ultrasound. That ultrasound revealed that the follicular growth wasn't exactly what they wanted it to be. So I did another 5 days of letrozole, at which time the growth was kind of where they wanted it to be. Like, each day they're supposed to grow 2 millimeters, or something even smaller than that. They're supposed to grow with each day. So when I went in after that second bout of letrozole, she was like, okay, this is where it's good enough that I know by the time we get in to do the insemination, they'll be the right size. Okay, so after that, they give you a date and an exact time to do your trigger shot to force ovulation. And the trigger shot isn't honestly I have a thing with needles as far as getting shots. I have 6 tattoos, so like I don't obviously have that big of a problem with needles actually. So I went in for my last one on a Friday, took the trigger shot Saturday night at like 10:30, which I was exhausted because if you're going through this process, you understand, and if you haven't yet started it, or if you have not had to go through this process at all, being in and out of the doctor's office, getting, for lack of better phrasing, things shoved up areas that you don't want things shoved up, it's tiring. And this was about like a week and a half of just 2 or 3, like, I think 1 week I had 1 visit, which was the initial, and then I had 2 visits within the span of another week. And it's tiring, and you're also like just thrashing your body with hormones, and you're tired. So I was tired. I was exhausted that night, and we had to stay up till 10:30, and I'm just like sitting on our couch, just waiting for this time to come so I could do it and then go to bed. But we did that on Saturday, and then Monday, right before 9 o'clock, Andrew had to provide his part. And then at 11:30, one of those, we went in for the actual insemination. And it's pretty standard. You get up on the exam table, you put your feet in the stirrups, and then ladies out there, if you've ever had a pap smear, they use the forceps to open your cervix. Then they put a catheter up there that's going to be used to push the semen through. They also checked to make sure everything was growing the right way, and also to watch everything happen as it's happening. So I had there was the catheter, there was the ultrasound wand, and at one point there was forceps. So the insemination happens, you get to watch it on the ultrasound screen, which was pretty cool. Everything kind of looks the same, so like she like actually like pointed it out. And then you just lay there for about 11 to 15 minutes before you're allowed to go home. So that happened on the 27th of January. 3 days post insemination, I started taking progesterone twice a day. Not every doctor and not every care team is going to have you take progesterone. And I've come to know that because I joined a subreddit for women going through IUI. But it is also very common. So your doctor will determine what's best for you if you're going through this. But I was taking progesterone twice a day from day 3 post procedure until we did the pregnancy test in office. Full disclaimer, for the 2 weeks that you're taking the progesterone, do not trust any sign that might be associated with pregnancy. The progesterone messes with that. It makes you, because you have more in your system, which you would anyway if you were pregnant because those levels rise. Anything that is a sign of PMS or early pregnancy will present itself through taking progesterone. The only way to know for certain that it is an early pregnancy sign versus the progesterone is with a test. Now, that being said, warning, the trigger shot that you take to force ovulation does contain some of the human growth hormone thing that is tested, the HGC, that is tested for in an at-home pregnancy test and a blood test. So if you're the type that is impatient and cannot wait for the blood test that is taken in office, start testing start testing on cheapo, like Dollar General, Dollar Tree tests to make sure that the trigger shot is out of your system, to ensure that it is an accurate positive if you get a positive. Obviously, you can take an at-home test, and that'll kind of inform you. But just make sure that you're doing it post the trigger shot getting out of your system. They typically say that it can stay in your system up to 14 days post-trigger. But if you're impatient, you can do the testing to see if it leaves your system sooner than that. Anytime post 14 days after the trigger shot, the initial shot, those tests should be accurate. The results of those tests should be accurate. Now for our results. I mean, granted, it would have only been a month and I wouldn't be announcing it this way anyway. Andrew and I already have a plan, but our first round was unsuccessful. I am not pregnant. So, which is fairly common. I think it's like only between 10 and 20% do experience success in the first round. However, with IUI, each round that the odds go up. Now, you're always going to have like a 20 to 25% chance. Even if you don't have a fertility problem, through the medical research that I've done, because I looked up actual testing, medical testing, a healthy person with no fertility diagnosis has about a 20 to 25% chance of getting pregnant each month. And through IUI, you're kind of getting those same types of chances. So whereas trying on our own, we might have a 5 to 10% chance, using IUI, we bump those up to the average odds. But it does up your chance. And with each round, the likelihood of getting pregnant goes up. Typically, most couples see a positive result within the first 3 rounds of IUI. And I know at my clinic, we try 3 rounds before we reevaluate and see if we should go another 3 rounds or try something else. So yeah, we weren't successful. It was kind of a bummer. But I also tested that Saturday. So once I knew the trigger shot was out of my system because it had been 14 days, it was the Saturday right before the test. I did the blood test. I did take a pregnancy test. It did come back negative. And we kind of got all of our feelings out then. So when we went in on the 12th and I got my blood taken for the test, and we got those negative results, it wasn't as emotional for us as it would have been if I had waited and just been like, nah, I'm not going to test. Because originally it was like, I'm not going to test. I'm not going to waste my money. But I was like, I was feeling all these symptoms, which is why I say if your doctor has you taking progesterone to help simulate uterine lining growth and all of that, don't trust the symptoms. Don't trust the symptoms because the progesterone is going to give you them whether you're pregnant or not. But yeah, so we did talk once we went in for the baseline for this next month. We are unable to try this month. I had an enlarged follicle that is not uncommon. It was left over from the last one. But if we would have tried again and the medicine that you have to take, the like the letrozole or whatever, we would not have had favorable results. So in an attempt to save us, because again we're paying for this out of pocket, we held off this month. But we do have a plan for next month. She wanted us to try another medication along with the letrozole. So once I'm through with this cycle, we will go back in and hopefully have a favorable outcome next time. And that brings me to the end of today's video. I thought it was going to be longer. I hope I gave as well-rounded of an explanation as I could without any video evidence. I do think with this next one, I'm going to see if our clinic allows us to record the ultrasound and things like that. And actually I might do a daily vlog for those visits. So that way we're getting you're getting my reactions in real time. But we're okay. We're okay with how this has turned out. We had the experience. We know what to expect moving forward. We've also taken this time to do research on our own to kind of make sure that we're representing ourselves in a way that is beneficial to us. Although, again, our clinic has been very, very helpful, very forthcoming with all information. And if we have questions, explaining why we're doing it this way and such. So I am hopeful. However, we're kind of on a bit of a deadline to be able to keep using this clinic because we are looking to move. So I'm hoping that if at all possible, we can get some success next month. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about today, or if you are going through this as well and you're maybe in the early stages and you have specific questions, you can either leave them down below or you can always email me. My email is listed on my channel. With that, I think that's the end of this video. I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week. Yeah, we'll blow up that bridge when we come to it. But until then, I hope you guys have a great week. I hope y'all are staying healthy, staying safe, and that this season of life in America is not kicking your ass. Bye.